Cool, flexbox. Who's heard of flexbox? So some of you have, from the reading last night, right?
Yep.
Oh no, that's not. Come on. I read, but like.
So my job is done. No. So flexbox is a part of CSS. Well, what is CSS? Can I get a volunteer?
Cascade
No. Layman's terms.
styling.
It's like we're in the skin styling.
Yeah.
What makes it look nice.
Right. As part of that, not only do we have to like make it look nice with the fonts, the colors, the borders, the margins, the patterns, and all that other blah stuff. That's a great definition right there. But not only can it be used for CSS and colors, but controls the layout of the page. So I believe it was Joe, John Spotlight, you margin auto or margin 50%, right? To make, he wanted to move something off the edge of the page to the middle of the page. Why is that so hard with margins? Why is that so hard in CSS? Well, it's actually not. Not with not with Flexbox. But we can use this to kind of abstract the content and the layout away from us and really kind of use things like CSS Zen Garden uses a lot of this kind of formatting ideas to do that. So what is Flexbox? Here's the formal definition. Cool. A lot of really fun words there. Flexbox, one-dimensional layout, method for laying out items in a row or columns. Items flex to additional spaces, which is blah, 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 blah. So what does that mean? Flexbox allows us to lay things out in a one-directional axis. So axes, remember math class from way back when? We have our x and our y-axis, right? It goes this way and this way. If you're cool, we have a z-axis that goes this way. Well, Flexbox allows us to lay things out only along one of those axes.
Why would you use this other than a table?
Why? Because this allows us to be a bit more responsive.
Okay.
As we'll see on the next slide, yeah, flex axis, I'm doing this a lot, right? This represents the x-axis, right? Well, actually what we can do, we can actually change that and make the x-axis the y-axis. So now our table rows, with just changing one property, can now become columns.
Right.
There's a property in Flexbox that goes, hey, lay these things out horizontally, automatically fill the width, and once we get to the end of the page, automatically wrap it. So it does a lot of stuff like that for you. Liv has a question? You have a question?
Oh, I was just wondering, this might be totally wrong, but is it kind of how, like, if you're laying things out, like in Divi Builder, and it's got, like, the multiple, like, when you start shrinking, it just automatically stacks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does a lot of automatically stacking and automatically shrinking for us. I've never heard of Divi Builder, but
yeah.
I'm going to assume yes.
So that's kind of what my question was. Is this is a better way for like different size screens? It'll automatically. It's kind of like what we were doing with the other side of the world. Just like automatically breathe to whatever size it needs to be.
Yep. Flexbox will feel like a lot of magic. Like things will just kind of start working.
Regardless of the stacking, though, it doesn't mean that that element is going to resize itself, right? Like, I mean, obviously, right? It's literally just going to stack, and it's going to be still mush to it itself. You still have to make it respond, that element responsive.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This is just one piece to the responsive puzzle. Okay. This is the first thing we're going to hit. Tomorrow, we're going to hit something called media queries, which is truly creating responsive pages. This is just kind of the first, like, oh, things are changing as we do things magically. So let's dive into this. What exactly is Flexbox and what does it mean for us? Well, there's four keywords that we have to take into account. There's flex container, flex item, main axis, and cross axis. Those are the four kind of things. So this thing on the screen right now represents an element in HTML, some generic container. It doesn't matter whether it's a p tag, a section, a div, a body, HTML, a tag, anything, any sort of tag. It's just a container.
Any tag.
Any tag, because you can flex anything. Because flex is just a CSS property that we just put on something. So the actual parent itself, the thing that gets display flex, That is called the flex container. That is the parent of everything that's going on here.
So do you have to add flex on the flex container and the flex item?
Nope, just the flex container. So let's make a web page real fast on our handy dandy whiteboard. We have a section that has a header, and it has a main, and it has a footer. Pretend that those are tags. So in this case, our flex container is this section here. That's the flex container. It's the immediate parent for everything else. So what's happening here is that now I can use flexbox to style my children, or the flex items. So each one of these is the flex item. That is what these are right here. So now the parent, the section, the flex container, has display flex. We can now say, hey, take my children, the header, main, and footer, and align them in the same direction, either up and down or left to right.
So it's not applied to specific, the parent, it'll apply to all of them?
Yes, if I want to lay out my children,
Okay.
I have to go to the parent, the immediate parent, because that's the container. It's like if I want to take a picture, like some artwork, and hang it on the wall. I'm not hanging the artwork to the wall. I'm putting the artwork in a frame, and then I'm doing stuff with that.
Okay.
If I put a P tag in main, it is still styled like everything else because it's still in that container.
Correct. This P tag is unaffected by this flexing. Because flex only acts on the immediate children on the flex items.
Okay, so you could still put specificity on that content box, on that item.
Yeah.
That would affect your P tag.
Yes. Odds are this would probably also have display flex because you have a couple P tags in here that you want to lay out right and stuff like that. So yeah, it only affects the immediate children. Unlike color or background color that kind of affects children, display flex only affects its children.
So again, it only affects the immediate.
The immediate children.
So how far out will it not apply? I'm sorry, explain that in a little bit more detail.
So we'll erase a few things here.
The thing directly under it, right?
Yep.
That's what you mean.
So inside of this main,
Uh-huh.
if we have a P tag, an A tag, and an H3 tag, for whatever reason,
And okay.
if I display flex here, it's only going to affect these ones. Okay, so and then just to go further, if I display flex this main as well, that display flex is only going to affect these ones right here.
So it only cares about its children, it could care less about its grandchildren.
Exactly.
So for the main, if you want to do flex on the main, you just create another
No,
container.
it's
Like that?
Yeah, that was smooth.
Let's say that you have so you have your 3 flex items. Let's say you're trying to do like something with 2 of them and something different with the 3rd one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like tag them all under the flex container,
Mhm.
would it take like how would you go
How would that
about
work, kind of
Yeah.
thing? Like if we wanted to have 2 items stacked on the top and 1 item stacked on the bottom, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So as we kind of deep dive into this, there's actually 2 sets of flexbox properties that we need to care about. One set of properties acts only on the flex container, and the other set of properties acts on the flex items.
Okay.
So we can go, hey, line up everything along the top of my container except for this one. Line this one at the bottom. So we can do some cool stuff with that. So yeah.
But does the main become the flex container?
Nope, it's still a flex item, but we're telling it to behave differently. It's like playing favorites. Like everyone gets a really cool car with 16, but you get a Ford sedan.
So then you just end up with lots of nested flex boxes.
Essentially.
Okay.
You'll be flexing a lot, but remember, each flex only affects.
Those things immediately
Yes.
pertain to it.
So you'll be flexing a lot.
Yeah.
Like a guy on the beach.
Yeah. So that's the flex container. It flexes and controls the layout of the flex items. It affects and controls the layout of the flex items along the flex axis. So the flex axis, it goes from the start to the end. By default, it's left to right. But you can change it to be up to down to up, or right to left. You can change that. That's why it's not just called the x-axis. Because sometimes we want to do a flex direction column instead of row. And the y-axis, the other axis, that's the cross-axis. Feeling good? Now let's make this. Let's build a website, a simple web page that looks like this.
That's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah, right. This should probably look familiar. It might have been in the reading. Maybe. Because the reading and the presentation both come from MDN. So let's make this. Let's head over to our terminal. Clear cd. App. I'm going to make a new project. Intro to flexbox. Alpha, that's fine.
Yeah. Or you did class.
Too fancy doing both at the same time.
Yeah, if you picked up on that,
Yeah, that's cool.
I definitely.
ampersands allow you to run stuff 2 commands at once. So you'd be like, hey, code dot and yarn start. It'll say open up in VS Code and now run yarn start. Windows, I think it's semicolon, but ampersands might work as well. But yeah, it's 2 ampersands. Little fun fact for you. We are going to commit our code. All right, so now, as always, with any good project, we care about the content first, right? So let's kind of break this down real fast. We have the entire page, right? That's probably going to be the body. And inside of the body, we're going to have what?
H1.
Have an H1 for the header.
Header 1, let's make this.
What?
Header 1 is let's make this, right?
This.
Okay, so let's make this is outside of our page.
Yes. This is our website.
Okay.
So we have an H1 for our sample flexbox example. And then we have something here, right? So see, we have 3 things stacked side by side.
Right.
So we know as developers, we're going to need something to put that in. Because we can't just stack things side by side and expect this to work. So that implies that there is a container there of some sort. So there's some sort of content.
We could use div.
Div is your last resort.
Okay.
Because what does div mean?
Division or something.
Exactly. You don't know what div means. It's just kind of a standard place. It's your last ditch effort. It's like, oh, this isn't a main, this isn't a side, it's not an article, it's not a section, it's just a div, and that's fine. It would work, not so meaningful.
So, a section?
A section?
But how do you decide when to use, like, a
I
P10
think you
versus
told us it's article, right?
like a
Um,
section or
I'd actually call that a main,
div?
because main, that's our main content, right?
Right.
Okay.
Each one of these
Or P's.
articles,
Article.
we're gonna have an article times 3, shorthand this.
And then the headers inside the article.
and then a header, and then this thing is that's the P. Yep. So that being said, you could take this to Gavin and Jason. They come up with 3 different HTML structures. This is just how I get there, because I see this as here's the main content of my whole page. Usually a page has a header, some main thing, and a footer, right? Header, main, and if we had a footer, a footer. Inside of that main, we have 3 articles. We have article 1, article 2, and article 3. Inside of those, each one has a header, and each one has a P for a paragraph. So could we have used sections and divs? Yeah. Should we?
So is that through item, is that another separate P that makes that separation between?
Yep.
So you have a double P?
Yep.
And so you just close the tag and then start another tag, right? You don't have to do P1 or anything like that.
Correct. So let's go through, let's make that HTML now. Because even though we're in CSS, we never really leave HTML. What did it say? It said sample flexbox. Then we had main. We have a article that has a header and a p tag. So you see what I'm doing there? I see something commenting on.
And so now you can just,
This is something called emmet. I can type the tag without even typing the angle brackets, the alligators, and just hit tab, and it'll give me the whole tag. Emmet's really cool. You can do stuff like article times 3. And get like,
That's how you did that yesterday.
ooh.
might have been.
You mean I've been typing this in for years?
So,
That's right.
yeah, right?
That's
Oh my God! I can't believe you just did that.
Yes.
Oh,
Honestly,
I'm so glad I'm here now.
Saves like what?
Wait till we
10
go.
seconds.
Oh.
Yeah, like this is just but tips and tricks like that are really help developers to kind of get to that next step.
Wow, it's level.
And the reason why we don't start you off on that day 1, you'd be like, the hell is that? I just don't know what I'm doing. I have this tool, I have this power saw, and a woodwork, and I'm cutting soap over here, and it just doesn't make any sense of what's going on. But now it's like, now you can appreciate and know when to use that. Yeah.
Outline everything.
Pretty much, yeah.
Years off for life, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So articles have headers, have P's times 3. They don't work, but it's okay. Emmet has a whole syntax to it, but I just don't know off the top of my head. Header and a P. All right, the header is first article. Inside of the P tag, we have lorem ipsum. Have we heard of lorem ipsum before?
How did you just
Yeah, how do
autocomplete
you
that whole
do that?
thing?
You just started typing in more.
Yeah. So lorem
So
is
you
another
did lorem
command.
tab.
And then whenever I saved it, it formatted it to be all nice and pretty because we have prettier installed. Yeah. So lorem ipsum is Latin and is a good placeholder. Because now we know we have text here, we know we have content here of some script. But it doesn't matter what it is, right? It can be about cats, it can be about video games, it can be about movies, it can be about TVs, it can be about whatever we want. But we don't care. As developers, it's just content. That's for like content writers and people that, not us.
Does
So
anybody know what that says?
It doesn't say
It's-
anything.
it's literally-
not actually Latin.
yeah, it's gibberish. Like that's all it is. There's also a lot of flavors of lorem as well. But I like just standard lorem. Why? Because it's in my editor. And I don't have to go to like Bacon Ipsum to go and get it. So I got my articles, article, second article, third article. And then just to be true to the mock-up, we have our 2 paragraphs. So without any of that stuff, If I go to localhost 3000, we have our content.
You just gotta flex it.
Quick though.
Put a couple.
I also might have done this once or twice. This is the exact example. Yeah, right?
Just a quick question. Just like how the P tag and the header tag has like default text or font style.
Yeah.
Is the main and the article changing the font or style or size of it in any way?
So what do you think?
I don't know. It kind of looks all pretty. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it, but as Amanda pointed out, we can go look. So let's go in, let's check out, inspect. And if I go to the main, the only user agent style sheet we're getting is display block.
Okay.
That's that block level displaying that we talked about one of the 2 days.
Like the container block, the box
Yep.
that it holds it in.
It's blocking so it stacks vertically. So by default, these things are stacking up and down. And that's it. Which actually works to our advantage because if we go back to our mock-up, our wireframe, our header should stack above the content.
So you only have to move 2 things.
Right, so we only have to really care about what's inside of the main, not the entire page. So let's head in. I'm going to now use flexbox. I'm going to target my main. My main becomes our very first flex container. So to do that, I'm going to head over to our CSS. Now inside of here, I'm going to say, hey main, display flex. Questions?
As you were typing flex, it gave you 2 options, flex and flexbox. They are different, question mark?
Great question. Display flex is what we need to use. I'm going to look that up. I'm guessing, this is my assumption. I probably shouldn't assume too much when I'm in front of a dozen people.
Gonna be a specificity thing, right?
Flexbox. It is going to be a shorthanded syntax that we will not look at today.
Okay.
Yeah, it allows us to kind of just set a whole bunch of Flexbox properties in one thing.
Gotcha, thank you.
So, but we just want display flex, and even with just the display flex, look at what we already got.
Cool.
They're now automatically side by side. They're on line. And even if we shrink our browser, put this to the side, they're still going to be side by side.
Ooh, dynamic.
Yeah, right? It's amazing. Just to appreciate it, 6 years ago, this was impossible. We had like display margin, float left, float right. Like centering stuff for some reason was super hard until recently. Yeah. So, yeah, that's
So who made Flexbox so we could send them an email with a thank you?
the people in charge of CSS. But no, like this kind of makes our life easier, right? All right. So from here, let's work on styling it a little bit, just to kind of make it a little bit closer to what it should be. So we have our H1 has a background color of purple. It's has a margin, not margin, heading on the top and bottom, and text align center, and its color is white. I'm looking at a picture over here. I'm not doing it from memory. There we go. Let's make margin 0 just to stick it up on top of the page.
What's the difference between doing padding going 0 to 0, you know, sizing it that way versus going directly to padding top, padding bottom?
So the question is, why did I do it like this instead of doing like padding 1, rem 0 kind of thing? Because essentially those two are going to do the same thing, right? One's shorthand for the other. Personal preference. As you'll see throughout the course, as you're kind of like learning, like work with me, I like to be explicit. Just to kind of side note, that's kind of why I like C#. Is that I like to be like, hey, you know what? You're doing this, exactly this, no ambiguity. So it's like, yeah, padding top, padding bottom. Boop. There we go. And as we get further and deeper into other subjects, you'll notice that what I write here usually isn't what's run in the browser. It's going through a couple layers of abstraction and compiling before the browser actually sees it. So if I can write stuff that helps me and my team perform better, I'm going to do it. So from there, we need to target the articles. Those get a margin as well, 1 rems. Background color is a nice teal. The color is still black. We'll give you padding of 0.5 rems. That's not that color at all.
Sea green.
Is there a light teal? Light sea green. It's close enough. So yeah, there we go. Compare that to our page layout. I'll take that. Yeah, we're gonna mess with the hex codes and maybe the padding and margins are a bit off. But really,
Crushed it.
we're there. Yeah.
Crushed it.
Like I would show this to the client and be, hey client, not 100%, but you like it? Kind of thing. And really all we did, we just said, hey display flex, take your children and line them up along that flex axis. How it feels so far?
So you kept the padding, the top one and the other one, so which one is it displaying?
Which one is it using?
Yeah.
Both.
Oh. They both mean the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's saying, hey, John, go make me coffee. Hey, John, go make me coffee. Like that's it's exactly.
It's just redundant.
Yeah. Ta-da. Cool. Let's dig into this deeper. One thing that I'm not happy with is our header, our H1. All right? Our H1 is we're saying, hey, it's actually really big and it spans the entire page. But semantically, that's not correct, right? Semantically, our header is just this thing right here. Right? It's not 100%, it's not the whole thing. So now, let's use our tools, display flex, to kind of work with that a bit more. So now we can go, hey, I want to center this in the middle of the page. Conveniently, I also want main centered in the page too, right? So now I'm going to actually put a display flex on my body.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So now I'll be able to center my header. And I see a few confused looks, but it looks exciting.
So is that to adopt both?
It is, which is okay, because our main should be centered anyways. If we have a really wide screen, like a really long tablet or really wide monitor, we still want our content right in the middle. So let's come over here, and let's throw. Let's get rid of that. And let's throw a display flex right there and see what happens. So we threw a display flex on our body and we got what we expected, right? It's going to line them up side by side along the flex axis, which is by default the x-axis, the row axis. But now I want to go, you know what? I still want to control your flexbox, but really what I want to happen is I want to change your flex axis. I'm going to go, instead of going left to right, I want to go up to down. So here's another property to know that you'll be using a lot. Flex, direction, column. So this goes on the flex container on the parent. It says, hey children, instead of going left to right, go up to down. Instead of forming a line, form a stack. Stand on each other's shoulders. Come on, we can do this. So I'm going to save that. And there we go.
What prevented them from just stacking completely?
Like, because we flex the body. Whenever we put flex on the body, if we look at our code here, and just correct me if I'm wrong, it's why did they go sideways?
No, why didn't they go like each article one on top of each other?
Oh,
Grandchildren.
grandchildren.
Okay.
Because we flex the body, articles are the grandchildren, and as Will reminds us, we don't care about them.
We know about grandchildren.
Yeah. No.
So because you flex those articles with the main, so that's why they're.
Yep. You can think of each individual flex as its own bubble, and that's it. Kind of like the Russian nesting doll example. Each, the one that's in the middle doesn't affect the one that's on the outside.
But can I ask you a question? So we put the flex on the body.
Yep.
But if we didn't want to affect the main, it would have affected it anyway. So we have to do it different.
Right. If we wanted to affect something else or wanted to do that, we'd have to wrap main in something else.
And then how do you know to use flex direction? Does container have its own property?
Yeah. We're going to send out some documentation as far as the homework and everything like that. They'll be like, here's all the really cool properties for the flex parent, the flex container. Here's all the really cool properties for the flex children, the flex items.
Okay.
And it's like what you can do with that. But we're still one thing off, right? We want to center stuff. So I want to go, hey, justify content center. Wrong one. Align items. There we go. Align item center.
Why align items and not
Just
text align?
So align
Just
items
boxes.
will center the actual content itself. You notice that now my H1 is only that big. Because it's saying, oh, it's no longer using up its entire space. It's saying, hey, however big the content is, try to put equal amount of padding on the left and equal amount of margin on the right. So it's trying to center it for you.
Oh.
This is our automatic center button.
And that's why the margins around each article got slightly wider.
Mhm.
Can you go back to the code?
Yeah, sure. I always personally get align items and justify content confused because like 7 out of 10 times I'm using both. Because align items center it one way and justify content center aligns it the other way, along the other axis.
So if we wanted what's in our P tag to be centered in those boxes, that would be justify content?
But it
I
also
believe so.
cut your.
What?
But also, so then how would you fix that? I guess, that
The-
extra white space.
The extra white space.
Yeah. Like it's centered, but.
Throw a width on this.
Um,
It might seem like we're like kind of like going back to how we
It does, but
Right.
that's.
But we're taking the format out of the HTML and putting it 100% over in CSS.
So
So you
align,
have to
It's-
redo it.
Yeah, it's solving problems that you don't understand yet. But here's tools that do things like that.
The 100% width just says use the entire screen.
So we're back to kind of where we started.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
So
Hey, you're not wrong.
good to do all of that in CSS? Okay.
So then we can just change the CSS and
so align items is left, right, justify content is up, down?
along the corresponding axes. But we'd switch the axes whenever we did flex direction. Right?
Reflex, but okay.
Say that again?
So
So originally I said align items is left, right, justify content is up, down. But he just said that's not entirely true because when you do flex, it flips them.
Yes. Yeah, right. So this is why, you know how we started about the axes? This is the flex axis and the cross axis, not the X and the Y.
Yeah, if you think about flex as left, right, and up, down, you're going to get yourself into a dizzy. You want to think about them about axes, right? So if your flex direction is row, then certain things work on the row and other things work on the column. So, right, think about it's. There's some good examples in here about the axes.
Yep. So let's start with justified content. Justified content is what we can use to move items along the original flex axis. So if I flex or flex box.
Yeah, do you ever use like an etch-a-sketch? Right, like one thing moves the thing left and right, and the other one is up and down, right? So imagine when you turn the etch-a-sketch right now, the knobs still do the same thing, but they work along a different axis. It's the same idea here. So if you're just sliding along a rod, right? If you imagine flex direction here is row, then justified content is moving things along that row portion. But if you do flex direction column, now justified content is moving things up and down that curve rod, up and down.
And here on the body, that's where we changed it from flex direction row to flex direction column.
Yeah.
So we've pretty much taken the etch-a-sketch and went bloop.
Yeah.
So that's like setting the axis, basically.
Yep.
So would you say then it's important to know
Axis you're on?
which tags are inline and which tags are block items?
No, it's more important for flex to remember which things adjust along which axes, right? So there's things that adjust along the main axis and things that adjust along the opposite axis.
Because like block and inline, stuff like that, are overwritten by flex.
Okay.
So like we have display block and display inline. Another display option is display flex.
So here's the real gotcha: 98% of the time you're doing flex direction row. Flex direction column, less so. I mean, it's a good example here where you've done it on the body, right? If you just kind of remember how they work when they're in row, you'll have 90% of what you need in terms of how that works. You'll just have to kind of remember, oh shoot, when it's the other way, I've got to think about, like, look at my page like this. Oh, okay, yeah, everything now makes sense with how things are aligned.
Is that because it's going to default stack anyway, so really you're just focusing on what you need to change the opposite way?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the default for flex direction is row. Because that's most of our needs are
Because
building things.
really,
in a row.
whenever we make this, we see that we're going to use flex direction here to lay out the nav bar. That's alongside the x-axis. So we're not going to be changing the flex direction here.
So you don't even have to type flex direction?
Correct.
It'll be implied.
So I'm still trying to figure out why we went back, I guess, on that one little section. I'm sorry, can we go over that one?
Yeah. So it's just to kind of, it's really for an academic person just to kind of see it in action,
Okay.
and that's it. And really what it does is that it truly allows us to take our formatting and displaying and have it 100% over in CSS and not in HTML.
So that was just a formality just to make it easier to change later.
Yes.
Okay.
And these are for us to kind of maintain and go on from there.
I got you.
So everything in CSS set garden is in the flexbox.
Possibly. I haven't actually looked at the CSS there. But it's using tricks like flexbox and probably something else called floating and something else called CSS grids to kind of help do that magic.
Yeah, I would imagine that most of those Zen gardens is probably using like every part of CSS.
Yeah.
They're using positioning, flexbox, floats.
Yeah, they're really diving into like the extremes of CSS to achieve that stuff.
They're really flexing.
Yeah, they're flexing CSS.
And this is something new, right?
Newer. This
All
became
companies using this?
this became standard actually when I started teaching 3 years ago. Is that 3 years ago? Yeah, 3 years ago. So Websites existed before 3 years ago.
What's newer, Grid or Flex?
Grid.
Great.
Grid came out like last year. It just became into production like this year.
Okay.
Is it just like infinite axes pretty much?
So Flexbox is along one axis, right? CSS Grid allows us to style things on 2 axes in a grid format. So you probably won't see many sites with that. You'll see a lot more with. You'll see fewer sites with Grid, more sites with Flexbox, and most without Flexbox.
Yeah, incrementally, what's happening with CSS is the committee that kind of organizes CSS is looking at the kinds of problems we all are solving and saying, oh, like this layout before would have been a lot of weird, like float left, float right, put margin in weird places. Okay, we're pulling at that curtain thing, right, trying to get our CSS not to be a mess. And they look at that and say, well, how can we make it simpler? Let's introduce Flexbox. So now we can do one-dimensional layouts really nicely like this. But then they start to look at, well, yes, there's things like the nav bar, but then there's also the page grid as well. And Mark's had to then do this weird like flex column thing to get this to work the other way. And then, oh, wouldn't it be better if we could lay things out in 2 dimensions? So grids comes along. It just takes people a while to make those shifts because developers who have been doing CSS for a really long time, like Jason's been doing CSS since like 1996, right? Like it takes them longer to give up those old ways of doing things, but that's the direction everybody is headed. Some teams faster than others. You can usually tell when the frameworks like Bootstrap, and I think you said we were going to talk about Bootstrap at some point. They used to have this kind of nav layout line built in, and they had to do all kinds of crazy tricks to make it work across many different browsers. They've given all that up, and internally they're using Flexbox. So once it becomes popular, then the tools that we use start to use those things, and they're going to move to grids at some point as well. So you usually have to wait a year or 2 after some new thing hits for it to kind of work its way in.
So then after Grid, it's going to be Cube, right? And then we'll be able to like.
Well, you've already got some of that in things like WebGL and whatnot.
Yeah.
You can do 3D VR graphics right in the browser.
Yeah, it comes back to like what problems with CSS are people facing? People aren't facing cubed layouts with CSS. Like they're just not. That's just not a thing.
But I got a minority report, right?
Yeah, we.
Well, from my experience, the CSS is a challenge, or at least it's been a challenge in the past because a lot of times the companies want to change the look and feel really, really fast. Not only that, now it's cloud first, mobile first.
Yeah.
But they want a site they want a corporate site, but they want that corporate site to also appear on phones and tablets and things of that nature. So that's changed.
Yep. And CSS, between CSS grids, Flexbox, and media queries, which tomorrow, allow for rapid iteration on that.
The other challenging part, and you're probably already feeling this, is like we all want there to be like, what's the one right way to do this? And that's what makes CSS both frustrating and exciting, is that there isn't just one way of achieving any one design. It's a big toolbox full of lots of different tools that can be combined in lots of different ways, and there just isn't one answer to anything, which makes it super frustrating sometimes, but also like really fun to work in.
Cool. So now that we've seen Flexbox in action, let's go to a more real-world practical example of something you'll probably be building at one point in your life. A nav bar, right? Let's do kind of our same kind of planning that we did before. What elements do we see on the page? A header. So probably everything's going to be wrapped inside the header. At least for the nav bar. We're going to have a main section as well. We'll ignore that.
I kind of see a list.
You see a list, eh?
Yeah.
Where do you see a list?
The home about, blog, features, gallery.
Home about, yep, that is a list of items. So we're going to have a list somewhere inside here. So we're going to put this, we'll just put this right here for now, UL.
So the list is inside the header. It's part of the header,
Yes.
basically.
This is a,
H1. Or is it an H1?
is it an H1?
Yes, it's an H1.
Yes.
Okay. It looks like an H1.
Is it?
I mean,
He's told you about that?
oh yeah.
You'll get tired of me asking that question. So yeah, we have our header and our H1 and our UL, and we have our LIs, naturally, of course. Anything else inside the header?
Section.
Where? I mean, that blue bar is pretty much H1.
Buttons, right? Are those going to be links, like click anchor tags or something?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
tags all the way down there, but
Add one.
Header.
cool. Let's make it. So ls app flexnav. Yeah, and the reason why I ask, is it, or is there anything else, and there may not be anything else, is to get you to think. Just be like, oh, I actually didn't mean that, or I meant that, or there's a new version of AppApp. So it gets you to think. I'm not being annoying. I mean, I am, but it's helpful annoying. So let's create this real fast. Public index.html. Get rid of what's there. We have our header. Inside the header, we have an H1. Flexbox example.
Sample network.
Thank you. Then we're also going to have a UL. That's going to have, how many things are there? 5? Okay. It's home, about, gallery,
Stuff and other
Contact
blog, and contact.
Exactly. Just cuts.
And just with that, so we're on 3002 now, all over the place here. There we go. So a bit further away from what we want now. It's no longer a simple stacked on top of each other. Now we're going to be flexing a few things. So what's the first thing that we're going to want to flex?
The entire header.
The header, right?
The header.
This thing right here. Because we want to lay out
all the
All the
the
children.
H1 and the UL. We want to target just these two for right now. So that is the header, display, flex, and for good sake, background color, blue, royal blue, and color is white.
Ooh.
Already we're side by side.
But we still need to flex again and make those into
You know,
Some
flex
rows.
your ULs.
So now we need to worry about the spacing, the laying out of still the H1 and UL. We will get to the list. We will. Let's work on this one. Say it.
Space between.
Yes, so what's the space between?
That is going to make sure that they're both as far apart as possible.
Yep. So this is another property of flex, where we can flex the flex container saying, hey, items, we want you to take your content and space between. So what this is saying, hey, whatever children you have, maximize the amount of space that's between them. So if I have two things, me and Hector, and I go, hey, justify content, I'm gonna try to put as much space between me and Hector as possible. So like I'm gonna like go all the way over here, far away from him.
What if there's 3 things?
Then we're gonna try to optimize that space.
And the guy out in the middle.
Yep. Thank you, Jason.
So that's like just making your padding 100%.
No, it's making your margin between them dynamic.
Okay.
But it's not actually margin, it's just space. It's like me taking this coaster and saying, hey, I'm gonna put it right here in the middle. I didn't make the coaster bigger, I just moved the item over there. Save. Boop. There we go. So now, according to our mock-up, we've checked the first box, right? We said, hey, all the way over to the other sides. So now let's work on the LI, right? We said that we wanted to flex the list, right? So what are we going to be flexing? UL, correct.
Where are we just repeating the last 2 steps?
Pretty much. You'll see that it's going to be the pattern that you're going to see is, oh, what do we need to flex? What's its parent? Okay, display flex. How much space do the children need to have? Is it space between, space around? Do I need to center it? Done. Like that's the pattern that you just do over and over and over again at different scales. It's not rocket science.
Just some dark magic.
Yeah.
Put another layer.
All right, so we're going to UL this. Display flex. There we go. Well, that's fun, I guess. All right. So how would we fix this? Any thoughts?
Space between the list items.
Is it space between or is it space around?
Space around.
What's the difference?
So the
Yeah, doesn't that do
Space around the center.
the same space around each item?
yes, it's the same space around each item. So instead of me maximizing the space here, it's going to take whatever space is here and try to do it as evenly as possible. So we'll have not up against the walls, but we'll have like little spaces here and spaces here, space there, and space there. So yes.
So the content in there the beginning of the content will be equally separated from the sample nav bar, and then you'll still have the space in between,
Can you say that again?
or space
Can you say that again?
around.
Maybe.
It's
No,
obvious.
let's say it once.
So it would be then space between?
No, actually what's going on here,
Did you see?
Which one did you?
it's saved. I use space.
Around.
It didn't do anything.
It didn't do anything. It didn't do anything.
It's because of the other flex boxes are still pushing
Because-
it.
Yeah, you're
Pushing it.
contained within another
Yes.
container. So
So there is no
space around.
space to give.
Yes.
to items.
Let's say, so let's put a border on it so we see what's going on. I'm also going to turn off the list style to get rid of the dots.
I think I got lost. I'm not on track.
Yeah.
It did not work.
It did not work. I'm going to remove it, and it didn't do anything. It didn't do anything because if we throw a border on it, 3 pixels solid white,
What was that key command to auto?
command
//
// You see how it's only that UL is only that big. So it is working, but it's not giving us what we want. It's saying, hey, maximize the space between each thing, but the things only exist in a container that's that big. So these 2 markers technically have space between them. They're technically space around them. We're not giving them the area to grow.
I'm getting it.
Because the other space between is pushing those things and then suffocate. It's like taking the air out of the room for the children.
Mm-hmm. So let's throw quick list style none on that, because that's bugging me.
What did you do? List style?
List style none.
None.
Yeah, that removes the dots.
I'm so
One more
sorry.
thing to
Right.
remove from the list.
The margin padding.
Padding. Padding left.
And that's what's pushing it to the end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what's creating that indentation. The indentation that makes room for the bullets
Mhm.
Gotcha.
is padding on the left of the whole list.
Ooh.
Okay.
Auto.
Mm-hmm. So now that we have that,
It's a little better.
Undo the default.
it's getting there. Not quite what we're looking for. Looking for them all spaced out nice and evenly. I actually asked Jason because he's probably the CSS master here. He used to teach our front end course. How would you fix this, Jason?
Sure. So the initial thing you might do is think, oh, well, let me give that list a fixed width, right? Like if I say width 400 pixels, and then go ahead and put that justify content space around that. Right? You're like, oh, we're jamming. Except you start thinking about what about on different screen sizes? What if the screen size is really small? What if it's really big? 400 pixels is not a good thing. We could use a percentage. So like let's make it 50%, right? Instead. That's better than pixels. But it's still, what if we're on a mobile screen that's only 400 pixels wide? Then 50% is only 200 pixels. That sucks, right? So again, 50% is not great. So what we could do is say minimum width instead of width. We'll set a minimum width, and let's put it at maybe a third of the screen. It'll at least be that wide, but it can get wider. And then there's some other things we can change later to make it sure that on a small screen that it wraps. But we'll solve that. That's a different bridge to cross. So was 33% good? Let's go 50. Let's say minimum. It should be at least as wide, but it'll allow it if it needs to be bigger than 50%. And I really don't think you need the space around. I think space between will work.
Is there a preference?
I would prefer space between because that gives me more control over where the items begin and end. Because now if I want, it pushes the contact all the way to the edge. The home now starts in a nice visual place in the middle of the list rather than slightly off the middle. And then if we want spacing on the right of contact on the right of sample bar, we handle that with padding on the whole pair.
Padding would be right.
Not there. I meant on blue, whatever the blue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, on the actual
you
parent.
Put it there so that it's consistent around the whole thing.
On the actual, on the grandparents
The
list.
header element, yes.
Can you just explain the minimum width thing one more time?
Yeah, so minimum width says this thing should be at least this wide,
Okay.
right? So on a screen that's really big, that's the width that will end up being. But if, let's say the content in that, let's say we add a few more list items to that list.
Okay.
50% is not big enough anymore for that. If we had set it to just 50%, then stuff would start overflowing. But because we set the minimum width to 50%, it'll just get bigger than 50%. But it won't ever be smaller than 50%.
Oh.
And that's the key.
Remember how we did min height yesterday?
Right.
Where we said, hey, our element can be
Yes.
this big, or it can be as big as the content, but it's never going to get shorter than this.
Right.
The same idea, except with width. Because then if our content gets bigger, expand, that's fine. But you can never get smaller.
And there's a max width and a min height and a max
Yeah.
height to go along with it.
Is there a situation where picking the 50% would be a problem? Is there like a downfall to that?
I would say it would be only, like in this particular case, it would just be because you'd have an issue on smaller screens. And you could write some more CSS that would style it differently for those smaller screens. But in this case, you can solve it simply with just choosing minimum width instead.
We could also do some like padding around the LIs.
Yeah, that's another way that you could do it as well,
So-
is to literally have just put a padding between each LI, and then they would just have a fixed space no matter how wide or how narrow the whole thing got.
Yep. So this is
That would
one
be spaced
solution.
around, right?
No.
No flex.
Nope.
Just
Yeah.
padding.
So I'm going to get rid of that.
Padding on each one of the list items, it would be the
equivalent of doing space around.
No,
Not quite.
space around won't, if there's no space to take, space around won't take it.
Yeah.
Padding is aggressive and will just make the element bigger. Space around won't change the size of the element.
Space around and space between says, if I lay these elements out their natural size with their padding, how much space is left over? It picks that space up and chops it, and then inserts it in the space that it has. So if you have no space to give, you will get no space. Padding is literally pushing things. We'll do that.
So is that more, I guess, that's better if you're thinking about like.
It's one of these CSS, like
It is.
there are many ways to solve that problem.
It
If
depends
you
on
wanna
a
be
lot of
short
things.
for like a strange size that you're.
I would probably go with the relative size on the container.
Okay.
And then I would put a small, almost like normally invisible amount of padding on each element, so that if the screen ever got too small, that the elements wouldn't cram up on top of each other.
Like a safety net.
A safety net, but the thing that actually lays them out, I would go ahead and use the flexbox that. But again, it depends on what the design is. If the designer is telling you like these are supposed to be flexible, but if the designer's like, no, the gap between each of these should be the same as the gap that's in this thing over here, then you'd be like, okay, then the padding is half of that gap, so that the two sides meet the gap.
Yeah. So is the button 10% of everything, or is the button always this wide, no matter what?
So basically, whatever the design, that minimum requirement, it still needs to look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how we're doing like wireframes and stuff like that? For a actual project, you're gonna have many wireframes.
For
It's like,
yourself.
yeah, here's a wireframe for a phone, here's a wireframe for a tablet, here's a wireframe for a desktop. And it's like you just kind of have to be adjusted and ask those kind of questions.
Okay.
To know
So
that.
that would be like maybe a worst case scenario if it got to this size. This is what has to happen.
And there's some ways that we can handle it. Specifically making styles for specific screen sizes or ranges of screen sizes. We have tools for that you'll learn in the near future. Tomorrow.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was tomorrow or Monday or what.
Yeah, we do media queries tomorrow.
Do you still have the 5? iPhone 5?
No,
Did
actually,
you finally upgrade? I thought I saw.
my phone died. I was so sad. My iPhone SE had to be retired. Now I have a huge iPhone 8.
Not plus.
Not plus.
The regular.
The regular.
Gavin and I are both in the same school of like we want our iPhone screens to say 4 inches because it's not a primary device for me, and I want a small thing. My phone is missing, and I've been carrying around. Well, actually, I left it in my office because it's too big, and I don't like it in my pocket. An older phone that is too big.
Yeah. I actually like my phone a bit bigger because it is a primary device for me.
Right.
I could totally sympathize with like, I just want it to be a small phone.
Millennial, Generation X.
Yeah.
And then I'm that micro generation born in 1980.
That's easier.
Yeah.
They call it Xennial.
Yeah, there's NEO, Generation Catalog.
I am an elder millennial. Get that right.
You are.
Yeah.
Still
What year were you
Mistake.
born?
You really want to know this?
I was 83.
88.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, stop, you're depressing me.
We can get into it, but
That's an older millennial?
Yeah.
Exactly.
yes,
Because
it's
we are at the tail end. We remember when like computers were
Mhm.
still yellow and black. And
my childhood was still outside, but my high school years were all dictated by technology.
My childhood was Commodore 64, so.
Right.
Mhm.
Gen X.
So, question, yes.
Okay. Why didn't we change anything in the first Flexbox? Like, why didn't we change stuff to change the size of the items, not the header Flexbox,
Why
not
do
the
we-
UL Flexbox?
Because the flex that we're doing,
Because we're worried about the list items, right?
exactly, we're worried about this flexing right here.
There is one more thing to change though in the header, which might be what you're getting.
Okay.
There's something still not correct here.
Because it seemed like the problem wasn't the list items so much as it was the amount of space the list items are allowed to take up.
Yeah, so
It feels like
that
the header
we
side.
can't control from that place.
Okay,
Yeah.
alright.
Yeah. Do you want to walk us through that solution as well, or
Sure.
do you want to?
So this is a thing that and that is a little hard to grok for Flexbox. So right now, so one thing to keep in mind is flexbox is about laying elements out it's not, I wouldn't say one dimension, but in a line, right? You're gonna wanna think in grids naturally about like, because a page has many rows and columns. Flexbox is not great at multiple dimensions, multiple columns of things. What it's really good at is laying things out. What it's designed for is laying a set of things out in one direction, either vertically or horizontally, and then how do those things, are they distributed horizontally, and how are those things distributed vertically? So what we set initially here is the horizontal just layout, right, which was to say space between. So is to push these things to their ends and try to put as much space between everything as we can. But now that was the horizontal axis.
Right.
Now we need to think about the vertical axis, because if you look at those things are still starting at the top of the element. One of them is taller than the other, so they're off center. So now what we want to do is, can you undo that for me?
Undo what?
What did you do?
I undid the list item padding. And I put back this.
Okay, yes. Actually put that back, because it actually illustrates the problem.
Okay.
So we see now that we've got some padding on those list items, that it's taller than the header, and they're off center vertically.
Right.
So what we want to do is, just like we did justify content to lay out the horizontal axis, we want to use align items to lay out the other axis. And we have a similar but not exact, like you have flex start, flex end as options here, but you don't have space between, space around, because that's for the other axis. So in this case, we just want to set it to center. And now all of these items are going to be aligned on their centers. Is it not browser syncing?
Nope, it's not.
That needs to be in the header.
Yeah, the header.
container, right?
Yes, sorry, put it on the header.
Yep. As soon as it's like that's not.
Ooh, debug.
Yes, nice work. There we
Boom.
go. Boom, right? So you might ask the question, as I did, why aren't these called align horizontal and align vertical, right? Because
That would be so much more simple.
wouldn't it?
Sure.
What it really is one of them is for distributing along what's called the primary axis, and one of them is for distributing what's called the secondary axis.
Who
The
determines?
reason we don't do vertical and horizontal is because you can align things in Flexbox as a row or as a column, in which case, when you do a column, justify content becomes this direction instead, and you justify along this.
So
That's the primary axis.
the 90-degree turn will flip it.
Yes, this took me like a year.
Okay.
Like as somebody, so to put some context on it, I've been doing web development, not professionally, but like as a hobby primarily, since the mid '90s, before CSS existed, right? So like, it was, if there was any design in the page, it was font tags with colors and backgrounds and tables, and you did everything else in images, and it was difficult and hard and complicated. And CSS came along, and it didn't make any sense, and we still didn't understand it for like 5 or 6 more years. And this still took, so I've been doing CSS that long, right? So over 20 years, and the Flexbox took me a long time to grok. And it was specifically this, understanding that justify content and align items is a row, but justifying this way and aligning is this way. And then when you change the direction of the flex to be a column, it's the same property name, it just operates like this. It's just changing which visual direction.
It's
like, turn your head to the right.
So yeah,
do the
it's
same
just
property
like
to the
it's just
same
like Evan said, we're taking our canvas and rotating it 90 degrees.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah,
sketch or a piece of paper or something like that.
Yeah.
Justify this
So
way,
what,
No,
align.
but
it's
no,
different.
because
Usually
if
it
it's,
changes.
you
It depends on
determine
how
if
you
it's a
set
row
that.
or a column.
Yeah.
The
So
default is row, so
you're
Martin set
correct in
that
that.
property yet.
that this is usually justified content and this is line items.
Okay.
But what we can do, we can go, well, wait a minute. Now,
Now we're in column.
this is still justified content,
Go,
and
go
this is
ahead
still
on,
line
on
items.
that header, change it to flex direction row.
On the header?
Or on the list item. I think both will make the point. So we add a new property whose flex direction. The default is row, but if we change it to column, then there we go. So they're centered because the line, which is now horizontal, is set to center.
Mhm.
If this item, if you made the header, if you give it a height now of something bigger, because by default an element's going to take up its width by default, but give it a height of like 500, yeah, there you go. So see now,
Okay.
if you think about it, that's the exact same layout we had before, just rotated.
So,
The
yeah.
space between is now vertical, and
Mhm.
the center alignment is, or the
Mhm.
horizontal alignment is center.
Can you turn the line items off just for a
And,
second?
and
Yeah.
the only
Yeah, we
change
can toggle
here
it, like-
is the flex direction is a column now, and that inverts a line item to justify content, what they're doing.
But you could have probably achieved this by utilizing an actual direction.
Correct. I could have just said
Okay.
align stuff center, yes.
Can you
Yeah,
toggle
flexbox, you're gonna use flexbox more for as a row than you are as a column, which is why that's the deal.
Yeah, that's what's actually spacing it out.
But if you ever wonder why it's not called horizontal and
Yeah.
vertical align, that's the reason. It's because it's meant to be primary and secondary,
Mhm.
not horizontal and vertical.
Yeah, part of me wishes that they would have done that, but I totally get why that flexibility is
Then
awesome.
You'd be stuck in the bug forever. You'd never come out.
Especially when we hit tomorrow
You'd be like,
and we go, hey, with bigger screens, you put these things side by side. When we get to a mobile phone, switch it to up and down.
So these
Ooh.
standards, like who names this stuff? It's done by committee.
Yep.
With engineers and people representing a large number of major tech organizations. And if anyone's ever heard the phrase that a zebra is a horse designed by committee, or a giraffe is a horse designed by committee, this is the kind of stuff we end up with. It's like it works, and there's a reason behind it. Was that the best reason?
Yeah.
No, it was a compromise that like 30 people with really strong opinions could finally agree on.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, committees like that are fun.
Yeah.
Not the good kind of fun. Maybe the great kind of fun. So that brings us to the best kind of fun, is tonight's homework. So for tonight's homework, you'll be building me this page. Okay? So recreate this as close as you can. It won't be pixel perfect. That's going to be hard to do for anybody. But really, just to kind of give you some nudges in the right direction. You already see there's some justifying content. There's some flexing happening and everything like that. So,
Can you give all a pro tip before I step out? Anytime you're doing CSS and you're doing a layout, if you're starting to use a fixed size for a height or width or a padding or margin, and you're starting to type pixels or something like that, stop and think, is that really what you mean? Or do I mean a percentage or something relative to something else?
Yep.
Because what you're doing when you nail yourself in, you're like Mark said, like, don't worry about making this pixel perfect. You might look at it and be like, that's like 650 pixels wide, so I'm gonna lay out everything as if it's 650 pixels wide. Don't do that.
yeah.
Don't do
If
that.
you're counting pixels, you're probably down the wrong path.
We're not designing for a magazine that's,
Yeah.
A4 layout or something like that. We're designing for the web, and the web is flexible. Everybody's device has a different screen size, so everything should always be flexible and responsive. That's a big word that you're talking about.
So minimum height instead of like height.
That's a great example
Yep.
of why we went with that. And it's not to say that it's always the wrong decision. It's that if you start to type pixels,
Yeah.
or even M's or M's, which are
Yeah, those are the next ones to go.
specific, which are typographic measurements. Even then, you should stop and ask yourself, like, is this what I mean to say, or do I mean to say something else? And if it is what you mean to say, then great, go for it. But a lot of times, like,
Yeah.
for example, in this whole layout, I'm seeing one thing that I should probably give a fixed size to.
Picture.
So can we put a pub picture instead?
As long as
Well, you
it's
see
a
one-
picture of cute pet, I don't care.
Like that?
Is there something that you, like a
safe measure, like
It's
percent?
so it depends on what it is. You would either do a percentage, which would be a percentage of like the parent, whatever.
Okay.
You could use there's a couple other units. There's one called VW and VH, which is view width and view height, which is actually the size of the screen itself. So you could say like that the size of this is like 50 VW, which is 50% of the screen size, no matter what the screen size is, right? So that can end up in doing weird things too. If you're not